Osman I, the founder of the Ottoman Empire, is a figure often remembered for his military conquests and religious leadership. However, his lasting impact goes far beyond the battlefields of Anatolia. It is through his strategic foresight, leadership qualities, and moral governance that Osman's legacy truly began to shape the future of one of the world's most enduring empires. By the time of his death in 1324, Osman I had laid the groundwork for an empire that would span continents, last for centuries, and influence the course of world history. Osman's leadership was defined not only by military victories, but also by his ability to create a social and economic framework that could sustain the empire. U's growth. The most significant foundation he laid was the administrative structure that merged Islamic principles with pragmatic governance. His decisions regarding the timur system, where military officials were granted land in exchange for service, created a solid base for the military and economic structure that would support the empire as it expanded. One of the key elements of Osman's leadership was his ability to balance Islamic law and governance with the diverse cultures and religions in his realm. His rule was defined by a unique religious tolerance that became a hallmark of Ottoman rule. Though a devout Muslim, Osman permitted non-Muslims to live under his rule with autonomy in their religious and personal matters, a practice that would later evolve into the millet system. By granting religious communities a certain degree of independence, Osman ensured that his empire would be able to absorb a variety of cultures without alienating any of its subjects. This inclusiveness played a crucial role in the empire's longevity, as it allowed for the integration of many diverse ethnic and religious groups, including Christians and Jews, into the Ottoman state. Osman's leadership also emphasized the importance of loyalty and justice. He instilled these values in his warriors and administrators, creating a sense of trust between the ruler and his subjects. This trust was vital in a time when other neighboring beyliks were ruled with corruption and tyranny. Osman's military prowess, combined with his moral authority, made him a leader that both his followers and conquered peoples could rally behind. Upon Osman's death, the empire he had begun to establish was still relatively small, but his descendants, especially his son, Orhan, would carry his legacy forward, building upon the strong foundation Osman had set. His descendants, through their military conquests and expansion into the Byzantine territories, brought the Ottoman Empire to greater heights. Osman's vision of a united, just, flourishing state would continue to guide his descendants as they built one of the greatest empires in history. In the years following Osman's death, the descendants of the founder built upon his core values: justice, tolerance, and loyalty. They expanded the empire into Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, ensuring that the Ottoman identity remained consistent and resilient. The early Ottoman sultans, inspired by Osman's example, continued to uphold his values while adapting to the evolving geopolitical challenges of their time. The seeds Osman planted in the early 14th century would blossom over the next several hundred years. As the Ottomans grew from a small principality to a sprawling empire that would dominate the world stage, the legacy of Osman I is not only in his conquests, but in the lasting cultural and social impact he had on the Ottoman Empire. His descendants, particularly his son Orhan, and later sultans like Mehmed II and Suleiman the Magnificent, continued to build on Osman's foundations of justice, tolerance, and military strength. Under these rulers, the Ottoman Empire would flourish, not just through military conquest, but also through diplomatic relations, economic trade, and cultural development. As the Ottoman Empire continued to grow, Osman I's vision remained at the heart of its success. His personal values and his understanding of governance, where strength was balanced with fairness and faith was merged with practicality, became the guiding principles that helped shape the empire for centuries. Through Osman's legacy, the Ottomans were able to create a state that was not only militarily formidable, but also economically and socially stable, making it one of the longest-lasting empires in world history. Osman I's legacy didn't just live on in the foundational structures he created. It was carried forward by his descendants, particularly his son, Orhan. Orhan's reign marked a crucial period in the evolution of the Ottoman state, where the ideas and systems established by his father were expanded and institutionalized. Osman's dream of a united Islamic state started to take a tangible form as the Ottomans expanded their reach, shaping both the political landscape of Anatolia and the social fabric of the broader Middle East and Europe. One of the first steps taken by Orhan after his father's death was the formalization of Osman's military and administrative systems. The Timur system, which Osman had established as a way to reward military service with land grants, was further developed under Orhan's rule. This system ensured the loyalty of Ottoman warriors by providing them with resources and land. But it also laid the groundwork for the Ottoman military bureaucracy, which would play a key role in the empire's long-term success. Under Orhan, the Ottomans began to structure their military and administrative apparatus with more formal titles and roles, moving towards a system that would one day be known as the Ottoman Devshirme Janissary system. Perhaps the most significant of these early administrative developments was the establishment of Ottoman law and governance, which combined Islamic principles with a practical, adaptable approach to ruling a multi-ethnic empire. Orhan continued his father's policies of religious tolerance, but began to introduce more formal legal structures based on Sharia law. While non-Muslims were still allowed to govern their own religious communities through the millet system, Orhan set up more centralized legal and tax systems, allowing for greater oversight and uniformity in the administration of the Ottoman territories. During Orhan's reign, the Ottoman army began its gradual push into the Balkans, continuing the territorial expansion Osman had started. The conquest of Bursa, 1326, was one of the most pivotal events in the early history of the empire. Bursa became the first major Ottoman capital. Its capture marked the Ottomans' transformation from a tribal principality into a regional power. This victory was not only militarily significant, but also strategically important for the future of the empire. It provided the Ottomans with access to Byzantine trade routes and strengthened their control over Anatolia's western front. Under Orhan and his descendants, the Ottomans developed a reputation as both warriors of Islam and masters of diplomacy. The Ottoman-Byzantine relations, which had begun with Osman's border raids and strategic alliances, evolved into more formalized interactions, especially as the Ottomans captured more Byzantine cities and territories. One of the keys to their success was the Ottoman practice of forging alliances with local powers and offering them political autonomy in exchange for loyalty and tribute. This allowed the Ottomans to expand without alienating their new subjects. Laying the groundwork for their imperial multiculturalism, Osman's descendants also laid the groundwork for the Ottoman economy, which became one of the most advanced in the world. Orhan and his successors built and expanded a network of trade routes, linking the empire to Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Bursa itself became a major commercial hub, attracting merchants from all corners of the world. The Ottomans benefited greatly from the Silk Road trade, acting as a bridge between East and West. The empire also established control over key strategic ports and trade cities, which contributed to its economic growth. Orhan's reign saw the establishment of the first Ottoman mint, further solidifying the Ottomans' position as a rising power in both commerce and finance. As the empire grew, so too did its administrative systems. The Ottoman court began to take shape under Orhan, with the sultans increasingly taking on a role not only as military leaders, but also as rulers of a diverse empire. The Ottoman palace, with its system of viziers and court advisors, helped to institutionalize centralized authority, further distancing the Ottomans from the fragmented tribal structure they had emerged from. The Ottoman military became a more disciplined force, with Janissaries' elite soldiers drawn from Christian communities through the Usman system playing a major role in the army. Orhan's leadership also set the tone for the Ottoman social system. He continued his father's policy of including non-Muslim populations in the empire's framework, granting them legal protection and offering them a place in Ottoman society. The religious and cultural diversity of the empire would be a defining feature of the Ottomans, with various ethnic groups and religious communities coexisting under the protection of the Ottoman Sultan. Ultimately, the economic, social, and administrative foundations laid by Osman and continued by his descendants ensured that the Ottoman Empire would not only survive, but thrive. By combining religious tolerance, military prowess, and administrative innovation, Osman I's descendants built an empire that could endure for centuries. From Bursa to Constantinople, the Ottomans expanded across 3 continents. But their early success lay in their ability to integrate diverse peoples into a cohesive, multi-ethnic empire. By the time of Osman I's death, in 1324, the Ottoman principality was only a small piece of the greater puzzle that would become the empire. However, structures, values, and leadership principles he laid down would serve as the backbone for future Ottoman growth. And his descendants, particularly his son Orhan, would use these foundations to transform the Ottomans from a modest beylik into an empire that would span continents and endure for over 600 years. The transformation began with Orhan, inherited not just a thriving military state, but also the moral and administrative framework that Osman had established. The growth of the Ottoman Empire in the early years was tied to the military and economic systems that Osman I had set in motion. The Timur system, which had allowed Osman to reward loyal soldiers with land in exchange for service, was formalized under Orhan's rule. This system evolved into one of the cornerstones of Ottoman military and economic power system, where loyalty and military service were intrinsically linked to land and wealth. Orhan's reign also witnessed a significant expansion of the Ottoman territory. The Ottomans, having established a foothold in Anatolia, began their campaign into the Balkans. The capture of Bursa in 1326, for example, was a critical turning point. This victory not only gave the Ottomans a new capital, but also provided them access to important trade routes and strategic military positioning against both the Byzantines and the Christian states in the Balkans. The conquest of Bursa, following Osman's strategic vision, helped elevate the Ottomans from a regional power to an emerging empire. While military expansion was key, Orhan also focused on institutionalizing governance and social reforms. Orhan's establishment of the first Ottoman mint in 1327 symbolized the empire's growing economic sophistication. It was under Orhan's rule that the Ottoman economy began to flourish, with Bursa becoming a center for textile manufacturing and trade, benefiting from its proximity to Byzantine commercial routes. The Ottomans continued to capitalize on their strategic location, growing into a hub for both European and Asian trade. This economic growth was critical in sustaining the growing military and social demands of the empire, the Ottomans. Success was also grounded in the military system that Osman had begun. While Osman's warriors, the Ghazis, were primarily focused on religious warfare against the Byzantines, Orhan adapted this military tradition to form a more disciplined and organized military force. Under Orhan, the Janissaries were formalized, the elite infantry unit made up of Christian boys taken through the Devshirme system, converted to Islam, and trained to serve the Sultan. This system not only provided a highly skilled military force, but also helped integrate non-Muslims into Ottoman society, reinforcing Osman's inclusive and pragmatic governance. The social policies laid down by Osman I also continued to shape the empire's identity. Religious tolerance became a defining feature of the Ottomans. Non-Muslim communities, including Christians and Jews, were given a degree of autonomy through the millet system, which allowed each community to govern itself according to its religious laws and customs. This system, rooted in Osman's early policy of respecting local traditions while promoting Islamic justice, ensured the loyalty of the diverse populations within the empire. Cultural and religious coexistence became an integral part of the Ottoman identity, allowing the empire to function as a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state. Osman's descendants also embraced the role of patrons of culture, and Orhan's reign was no exception. During this period, Ottoman art and architecture began to flourish. The foundation of mosques, schools, and hospitals, funded by religious endowments, was not just a continuation of Osman's religious policies, but also an investment in the empire's cultural development. These public buildings became centers of knowledge, fostering a spirit of learning, artistic expression, and social cohesion that would last through the centuries. By the time of Mehmed II, who captured Constantinople in 1453, the Ottomans had evolved from a small Anatolian state into a major empire. The institutional, economic, and social structures set in motion by Osman I and his descendants formed the foundation for this expansion. Mehmed, known as the Conqueror, would build on Osman's legacy of inclusive governance, military discipline, and strategic expansion. Under Mehmed, the Ottoman Empire would reach its peak, but the seeds planted by Osman I's faith-based leadership Military innovation and inclusive social structures would ensure the empire's longevity. What began in Sigd as a small frontier beylik grew under Osman I and his descendants into a vast empire that stretched from the gates of Vienna to the heart of the Arabian Peninsula. The legacy of Osman I, though often understated in comparison to his successors, was fundamental in shaping the trajectory of the empire. His vision was not just of territorial conquest, but of creating an empire built on justice, religious inclusion, and sustainable governance. Through the careful establishment of social, economic, and military systems, Osman I and his descendants set the stage for a powerful empire that would endure for centuries.